Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very exciting day. We finally have our hands on the magnificent GH6. Now this thing is absolutely filled to the brim with brand new specs. We're talking a new 26 megapixel sensor, a new AF system, still using the old science, but utilizing new technology. We're talking a 5.7K sensor inside this thing, which can deliver 13 stops of dynamic range at up to 240 frames per second slow motion, which is just absolutely incredible. It can deliver that in ProRes as a recipe for recording. And you can also get data rates of up to 800 megabits per second. This thing in video is absolutely no slouch. Not to mention, Vlog is already pre-installed in this thing. It's got image stabilization up to 7.5 stops. There's even a 100 megapixel high-res handheld mode. That's going to be incredible. And for photography too, this thing can shoot 14 frames per second on the mechanical shutter and up to 75 frames per second on the electronic shutter. Yeah, I said 75 frames per second. Crazy. So as you can guess, we're super excited to get outside and use this camera. So we have it for one day in the real world. So we'll see what we can get video wise and photography wise. But before we go outside and check this thing out, let's just take a look over the body and see what the improvements are kind of over the GH5. So when you first pick up this camera, you'll notice it feels very similar to the GH5. A lot of the buttons are actually located in the same kind of locations. The grip feels very familiar and similar. The weight and the balance also feels very similar. And that's not a bad thing because the GH5 was actually super incredible. When you turn the camera around to the side, you'll notice here you've got your mic slots here. You've got your headphone slot. You've also got an SSD compartment there, or a reader, and a HDMI, which is actually a full HDMI, which is so incredible to have on a camera like this. Right next to those slots is the vents, so this thing does not overheat, which is super beautiful. Big nice red button there for recording on top. And then the coolest thing here is probably this LCD screen here. So flips out, right? You got the articulating screen, which we've become so accustomed with nowadays. Really nice screen, but the beautiful thing about this is you can also use a tilt screen. It's a really cool mechanism how it works. So you've got that, you can do your flip out, pop that around, and then that thing can just tilt and get you all those kind of angles. There's not major big differences, but it does feel a bit more of a substantial, stronger, sturdier camera than the GH5. This thing has so much built-in stabilization. Everybody knows what the GH5 could do. The GH5 was just well renowned for how good the stabilization was on it. So as a disclaimer, I'm going to take this out. Everything you see, all the videos, all the photography that you see taken on this, it will be labeled at the bottom, will be done without a tripod. We're going to try the 100 megapixel section out there, handheld. We're going to do all the photography and we're going to do all the video handheld. So if it looks super so if it looks super stabilized, that's everything at the camera. We will not touch this in post afterwards. We want to keep this nice and raw, so when you see it, you know what you're getting. Anyway, that's a disclaimer. Let's actually get outside. So, as you can see, today is a bit of a crazy stormy day. It was really lashing it down to rain this morning. On the only day we get to test out the GH6, it has to open up and let the typical UK weather out, but oh well. Right now there's a slight break in the storm. The sun's coming out, but the wind is here. but I think we should use this opportunity now to try and get some footage out of this beautiful GH6 camera. So let's start off with some photography, see how we get on there, and then we'll move on to some video. Okay, so this is a very high dynamic scene, as you can see right now. A lot of sun going on behind me, but it lends itself greatly to testing out the dynamic range of this camera. So I'm going to switch this camera on now, get out of the video mode, go into manual, and the first thing I'm going to try and do is test out actually the 100 megapixel handheld situation here. So I'm gonna light it up, take my shot, and see how this thing comes out. I'm not sure if you heard that, but you can hear the camera itself just like firing away a lot of shots there as I was handheld. It's now creating a high resolution image. So let's see if that's any good. If it is, you'll see it on the screen right now. Let's take a look at this. All right, so I've walked a little bit further up the beach, a little bit more quieter here. It's a bit nicer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run around the beach, this landscape here, and just shoot some of the video quality of this camera. So we're going to start off with the highest resolution we can do. So we'll be shooting in ProRes at 5.7K, which is going to be quite incredible. So we're shooting about 24 frames per second, so it should look very normal and cinematic. The only issue I do have is I don't have any ND filters for my lens, so I'm gonna have to stop down the shutter a little bit, so it may not look as perfect as what it will be when you actually have all your gear together, if you know what I mean. So let's go ahead and shoot some high resolution ProRes 5.7K. Wow. So I don't know how it looked to you guys just yet because I haven't seen the finished product. Obviously I'm still out here, but through the viewfinder that looked absolutely amazing. Now the lens that I'm using is actually going all the way up to 200 millimeters, the one I put on here right now, and you probably see I was zoomed all the way out in the distance right there. Remember, this is all handheld, no tripod, and look how stable those shots are. The dynamic range looked great through the viewfinder, but obviously it's something we can test afterwards in post. But so far so good. Now bear in mind, all those shots you just saw was in ProRes HQ, the highest resolution we can do here. So what I want to move over to now is start to explore some of the slow motion. So let's just drop all the way down to, I'll say all the way down because there is so many options. When you look at the menu of this camera, I'll put some of that on the screen right now. The options, the recipes for video is incredible. This camera is amazing for video. So what we're going to try and do now is go down to 1080p and test out. I think we can get up to 250 frames per second or even higher than that. But let's test out whatever the highest frames per second is on that, which means I'm gonna have to get a little bit closer to the ocean here to get a bit more dramatic. But to be honest, with this zoom and this image stabilization, I could just stand here, to be honest. Oh gosh, I'm really impressed by this camera. So far, it is amazing. One thing I will say, sorry, just before I continue, I know I'm talking a lot, but the way it feels in hand, like the grip, like the functionality, like the way you hold it, just it lends itself to being more stable. Now I use a lot of other different cameras, for instance right now being recorded on the Blackmagic camera, and if you try and hold that handheld, there's just not enough grip in there, whereas this one, it fits so nice that I feel like I can hold this all day long and shoot videos. This may have to be my personal next camera, you know. Another good thing as well, there's literally record buttons everywhere, so you can never complain that you forgot to press record. All right, let's shoot some slow-mo. So I am really impressed with this camera. I can't wait to get the footage back onto the computer to see how it's turned out. Now, we was doing a full frames per second there, which is like 200 frames per second. It all looked super crisp. Sometimes when you do slow motion on certain cameras, you start to see this fuzziness. I was shooting manual focus and autofocus between that, so I may have missed some focus scenes during that, so I do apologize. But one great thing I will say is the tracking continuous autofocus in this thing. I mean, some people say that Panasonic don't really have that upper edge, but this thing was really locking on. I could see the box around every single human being, even out in the far distance. It would lock multiple boxes on people and track them as I was moving around, and that's incredible. I mean, for a run and gun camera, this thing so far seems to be the best camera I've ever used for that, which is just absolutely incredible. So I've been really impressed with this camera, and hopefully you've seen the footage and you are as well. I think it's the ultimate, right now, the best micro four thirds run and gun camera out there. The autofocus, the image stabilization, the dynamic range, the color science, it's all so incredible. I think you guys should check this camera out. And if you want to purchase one of these cameras, head over to castlecameras.co.uk, put in your order. And there's nothing else to say. Just enjoy. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you whichever video comes next. Take care. Just casually walking off as if, that kind of dramatic walk away from the camera.